What to study on Shavuot. Now, there's a very widespread custom that wasn't always around to stay awake the entire evening, so from Thursday evening until Friday morning, staying awake, learning Torah, and then davening Tikun, which is a very early morning davening. And then normally after that, people sleep a while, they make the middle of the day meal for the Chag, and that's basically how it's observed, and it's very widespread. So the first question is, should you stay awake to learn? And the answer very simply is no. You don't have to stay up all night and learn. There's actually an opinion that says that if you will not be able to focus on your davening in the morning, then you do not need to stay awake the whole evening and learn Torah, but rather you should have a good rest so that in the morning you could wake up fresh to daven properly and pray to Hashem. Also, there's many big rabbis that used to sleep through the night, because remember, rabbis are quite busy in the actual day of a festival, normally leading the davening, reading from the Torah, and also giving shurim. They need to be fresh for that. But these days, a lot of people do observe this custom. So there is two customs of what to learn on Shavuot. The first custom is Tikun Leil, and that is the most widespread custom and observed throughout the world, basically. And that is basically reviewing the entire Torah, as well as the prophets and the writings and the Mishnayot and the commandments, the 613 commandments that Jews believe we should follow. So it's basically reviewing the entire Torah, but in a shortened form. And I will discuss that after this. The second custom is to learn whatever you like to learn. So it's basically then up to you what you want to learn. Now, I have always followed the second custom of learning whatever I want to learn, but I always felt that wasn't structured enough. I didn't get a lot from my learning. So this Shavuot, B'ezrat Hashem, I'm going to do the Tikun Leil. So the way the Tikun Leil works is, first of all, you do the Torah. So the way you do the Torah review is you read the first 3 verses and the last 3 verses of every single parsha in the Torah. So that's the first 3 verses and the last 3 verses of every single parsha in the Torah. Then you get to the prophets and the writings. So in the prophets and the writings, you do the first 3 verses and the last 3 verses of every book in the prophets and in the writings. So from Isaiah, for example, you do the first 3 verses of Isaiah, and then you do the last 3 verses of Isaiah. So you don't do the whole thing. So it's not as much as you think. Basically gives you like an overview of the entire Tanakh. What you do for Mishnayot, Baruch Hashem, I have the whole Kahati series at the back. So I do have the whole set, the whole chas. So what you do with Mishnayot is you do the first Mishnah and the last Mishnah of every tractate. So Brachos, you will do the first Mishnah of Brachos and the last Mishnah of Brachos. You won't do any Gemara, you won't do anything in between, just the first Mishnah and the last Mishnah of every tractate. So you'll do it for Brachos, for Shabbos, Kiddushin, the whole chas. Then after that, you will do Many people do the midrashim. That's not something that I'm going to do. And so the last one that I will do, which many people do, is they do the all 613 commandments that is given over from the Torah, and you can get it in various books. And I'm going to show you the books after this. Also, another thing to add, in the Torah learning, the first section that I spoke about, where you do the first 3 verses and the last 3 verses of every parsha, any parsha that has to do with the giving of the Torah or contains the 10 commandments, you will do that parsha completely, in its entirety. You will read the entire parsha. And that is basically Tikun Leil. So to illustrate this practically, so you get a clearer view of what to learn in this Tikun Leil, you get yourself a Tanakh. This is the Art Scroll Tanakh. If you don't have a Tanakh, you can take a Chumash for the Torah section, but you'll need the Nach part, the Nevi'im and the Ketuvim, the prophets and the writings, to complete Tikun Leil. But basically, for Bereshit, Parsha Bereshit, so this is the first Parsha in the Torah, obviously, you will do the first 3 verses, and then you will do the last 3 verses of Bereshit. So here is the last 3 verses of Bereshit. And then, as I said, for the prophets and the writings, you will do the first 3 verses of each book and the last 3 verses of each book. So each prophet, first 3 verses and last 3 verses. And the same with all the writings. So it's really not that much. And then for the Mishnayot, you do the first Mishnah of every tractate. So Brachos, the first Mishnah, and then the last Mishnah for Brachos, the same for Shabbos, and so you go on through the whole Chas. Now, what I personally do for the 613 commandments is I have the Rambam's Mishnayot Torah. So this is the Rambam's Mishnayot Torah. It is called Sefer Hamadah. That is the Sefer that contains the 613 commandments. And you will see there, I'm not sure if you can see it clearly, but it's got the Hebrew on the one side and obviously the English on the other side. And this gives you all 613 commandments that you go through step by step. And that is basically Tikun Leil. It, like I said, it's the most widespread custom. It's also very Kabbalistic. And that's personally what I'm going to do this Shavuot. Another handy thing to have for Shavuot is obviously a machzor. So I've got the machzor for Shavuot. I actually got this book from my old shul that burned down, so it's got a bit of burn damage, which adds a bit of character to my machzor. Now, the machzor does contain Tikun Leil at the back of the machzor, אבל זה רק בעברית. But this is completely in Hebrew, and I do learn in English because I want to know what I'm learning, and my Hebrew isn't good enough to learn everything just in Hebrew, but I'll show you so that you know where it is. So in the Art Scroll Siddur that has the English and the Hebrew, it starts on page 670, but like I said, the Tikun Leil is זה ממש רק בעברית. אין אנגלית פה. So it's only in Hebrew, there's no English for Tikun Leil. The rest of the machzor is obviously, as we all know it, English on the one side, Hebrew on the other side, and it's obviously much easier to follow any chag, any festival with a machzor, because it gives you the Torah readings, the day you're on. If you're in Chutz La'aretz, there's obviously always a day added. So it tells you where you are at, basically. This is now generally speaking about Chagim, so machzors is great. Like I've got a machzor for Yom Kippur, for Rosh Hashanah, and now I also got this machzor for Shavuot. So it is much easier to follow. It's also got the book of Ruth in it, because on Shavuot we do the book of Ruth as well, Megillat Ruth. So that's another thing that we do, and it's already in the book. If you don't have a machzor, it's not a crisis, because each chumash has the book of Ruth, Megillat Ruth, in the back of the normal art scroll chumash. I'm not sure about the other chumashim that's out there. I'm sure they have it as well, because they all use the same standard. So that's basically Tikun Leil. That's what to learn. So you could either do Tikun Leil, which is this process that I've outlined now in quite some detail, or you can do learn whatever you want. And you don't have to stay awake and learn throughout the night. If you feel you're going to daven better with more kavanah, more concentration, if you do sleep, then it's better to sleep by many opinions. So you're safe there as well. Then another very interesting thing that I have learned, I'm learning with my own personal rabbi, Rabbi Yitzhak Steinberg. He's the student of Rabbi Shlomo Zalman Auerbach of blessed memory. I asked him several questions before each Chag, or just learning Torah. And I asked him about some of the customs that I know coming from South Africa, where the eating of milk products is very widely observed for Shavuot. The whole reason given is that the Torah was given at Mount Sinai. Now the Jews know how to shecht animals for kosher meat, to kasher their meat. So they didn't have time to shecht and to eat, because it takes some time to make kosher meat. So that is why Jews eat milk products on Shavuot. Now this is a minhag, and it is not halacha. There is a halacha that you should have meat and wine on every festival. And you should have, on Shabbos you have 3 meals, and on Chagim normally you have 2 meals. So that's first of all. One of the main things to have is meat and wine. But it's also very important in Judaism to keep minhag Israel, to keep the customs of the people of Israel. So I asked my rabbi what I should do, because I love meat. So it also adds to my festival. It's called Oneg Chag, the enjoyment of the festival, which is also very important in festivals and also in Shabbos. So he said the best custom to do is you have, because on a Chag or even on Shabbos, the main meal should be in the middle of the day. It shouldn't be at night. Even though in Chutz La'aretz, the biggest meal is at night, and so often it's a smaller meal in the daytime, it should actually be the opposite way around. So he told me the best way to do it is you have a molchik meal at night for Shavuot, and then a daytime meal should then be with meat and wine, because that is fulfilling the mitzvah in its proper way and in the right time, because the day meal should be the most important meal. So just to recap that, you don't have to eat milk products. He said if you don't like meat, if you don't like milk at all, klum, nothing, you don't like it, then you should certainly not have milk products, but you should only have what you like to eat. I every now and then have a pizza, so I do eat cheese every now and then, not a lot, but it shows that I'm not disgusted by a milchik product. So I will observe the custom that my rabbi told me by doing the evening meal with milk, and the daytime meal will be with meat. Now a lot of vegetarians or vegans would ask, So if you're saying it's a mitzvah to do it with meat and wine for chagim, for festivals and for Shabbos, I don't eat meat. So then again, the same rule applies. If you don't like meat, you don't want to eat meat, you're disgusted by meat, you never eat it in the week, then you should certainly not eat it on Shabbos or on Chagim, because if you do, you are destroying your Oneg Shabbos. You're destroying your enjoyment of Shabbos as well as Oneg Chag, your enjoyment of the festival. So certainly if you don't eat meat, if you find it disgusting, you're perfectly fine there, because the whole thing about the festivals and Shabbos, it's mentioned in the Torah, that you should be besimcha, you should be in happiness, in joy on your festivals. And that's why you should do things that you enjoy and eat things that you find obviously delicious and looking forward to it, to eat it. So that's some of the main things that I think most of you should have or could have some questions on. There's a few other details about what brachot to say if you did stay up the whole night, but I think that's shiur for another time. This is already becoming quite a long video. So I want to wish all of you Chag Sameach. May you have a joyous festival. Baruch Hashem, in Israel, the shuls is opening up exactly on Shavuot, the time when we receive the Torah from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, from Hashem, the creator of all. Blessed be his name. So it will be my first time back at my community in Kilat Bnei Aaron in Ranana, Rak, Bedrom Africa, only South Africans. So it will be a very good experience, which will obviously add to my Oneg Chag. And right after that, Shabbat Shalom, because we will go straight into Shabbat. When you do light the candles before Shavuot, you will light the candles for Yom Tov. You'll say the bracha of Yom Tov, and then you will also add Shechianu, because Hashem brought us to this occasion, to this season, that we're privileged that we can celebrate Shavuot. And Erev Tashlim, you must also make, if you are going to prepare food on Chag for Shabbos. So Baruch Hashem, I've been invited out for a Shabbos dinner and lunch, so I don't really need to do it. I always do it just in case, but you don't really, if you already have everything set up and you have meals lined up, then you don't really have to do that. But if you are going to make food, prepare food on a Chag for Shabbos, you do need to do that. And that's one of the advantages of a Chag over Shabbos, is that you can cook, because you can transfer flame. And it's also very important that you can't increase the flame or decrease the flame. You got to leave it as it is, which is another misconception that many people have about the whole cooking situation on Chagim. So I wish you all Chag Sameach, Shabbat Shalom. May you continue to be blessed in everything that you do. May we all merit to receive the Torah from HaKadosh Baruch Hu anew. May it all inspire us for the rest of the year, and may we only know simcha, happiness, and rak briut, only health. Chag Sameach v'Shabbat Shalom.